This is a Fox News Alert. I'm Brett Baer in Washington. A presidential contender makes an announcement on his campaign in just a moment. But first, a suicide car bombing outside the American consulate in Erbil highlights a rapidly deteriorating situation involving ISIS terrorists in Iraq and growing Iranian influence in the region. We have Fox team coverage tonight. James Rosen here in the Bureau with how Iran is continuing to expand its bank account despite economic sanctions. We start off, though, with Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry and new uncertainty about what the president might be willing to do to get a legacy deal done with Iran. Good evening, Ed.
Good evening, Brett. That's right. The president today seemed to leave the door wide open to giving Iran quicker sanctions relief than his critics on the Hill want. President Obama said he did not want to interfere with Secretary of State John Kerry's negotiations, but signaled he's open to letting Iran get immediate sanctions relief in order to make it more palatable to Tehran. Just days after the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, said that was one of two key conditions to get a final nuclear deal by the end of June.
Part of John's job and part of the Iranian negotiators' job and part of the P5+1's job is to sometimes find formulas that get to our main concerns while allowing the other side to make a presentation to their body politic that is more acceptable.
At a news conference with Italy's prime minister, the president added twice for emphasis his main concern instead is making sure if Iran breaks the agreement, sanctions can be snapped back in place. And he downplayed concerns that Russian President Vladimir Putin is now selling Iran defensive missiles.
I'm frankly surprised that it held this long, given that they were not prohibited by sanctions from selling these defensive weapons.
That came as Speaker John Boehner, in an exclusive with Fox Business, sharpened his attacks on the president for letting the U.S. take a backseat role to Iran against ISIS on the ground in Iraq.
I think the fact that the Iraqis had to call or accept an offer from the Iranians to help direct the fight going on in Tikrit should be an embarrassment to our country.
Meanwhile, in another key Iraqi city today, Erbil, ISIS launched a complex attack on the U.S. consulate, starting with a car bomb, followed by an 8-man assault team, which killed 1 person and wounded 5 others, though all U.S. personnel were accounted for.
I think that Iraq remains a dangerous place. Many parts of it do.
Republicans were also furious that Joint Chiefs Chairman General Martin Dempsey suggested it did not matter much that ISIS has advanced on Ramadi.
The city itself is, it's not symbolic in any way.
Republican John McCain, a frequent critic of Dempsey, said it was stunning since Ramadi is the place where in 2006 U.S. forces led a ferocious battle to take the city back as part of the famed Anbar awakening.
And now this general says that it really doesn't matter. I wonder what he would say to the families of those Marines and soldiers, those brave Americans who were killed and wounded in the battle for Ramadi.
Now, we've just learned that the president spoke by phone today with the King of Saudi Arabia about Yemen, where Iran-backed Houthi rebels have seized power. Brett?
Ed Henry live on the North Lawn. Ed, thank you. Now to a fascinating story about how Iran is actually pulling in big money from the U.S. while all those sanctions are still in place. And who knows what it's doing with all that cash. Here's Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen.
Brett, good evening. This is an extraordinary tale involving these nuclear discussions where one of the key conditions set at the very outset ensured that this money would flow into the coffers of the regime. Forget the sanctions that will be lifted if and when Iran, the U.S., and 5 other world powers can finalize a nuclear deal. For almost a year and a half, the Islamic regime has been receiving roughly $700 million a month in assets unfrozen by the U.S. and its negotiating partners. All that moolah, now in the hands of the mullahs, has so far added up to about $10 billion. 1 year ago, the State Department vowed not to let these funds be put to ill use.
Theoretically, this money could be used to buy rockets to send to.
If we found out that the Iranians were using any money of theirs for sanctionable activities, it would be a huge problem. I can guarantee that.
but certifying that the less than fully transparent regime has not misused the unfrozen funds is difficult at best. And in the U.S. intelligence community's annual assessment of worldwide threats, the Director of National Intelligence recently certified that as of February 13th, Iran was still developing increasingly sophisticated missiles and provided robust military support to Damascus, itself a state sponsor of terrorism, including arms, advisors, funding, and direct combat support, activities posing an ongoing threat to U.S. national interests.
Iran's continuing nefarious activities in the region, including financing and supporting terrorism, training terrorists, trying to subvert the regional order, will be facilitated by greater access to these financial resources that Iran could not get to in the past.
With greater certainty, the State Department says the unfrozen assets are separate from long-standing legal claims being pressed in federal courts against the regime by hundreds of American families victimized by terrorist acts either directly carried out or aided by Iran, including the 1979 hostage crisis and Hezbollah's deadly bombing 4 years later of a U.S. Marine barracks in Beirut.
We've always said that every issue is separate from the nuclear issue, that we don't tie the nuclear issue to resolution of any other issue with Iran because, let's say you can't get a nuclear agreement, we wouldn't want to not be able to resolve the other issues.
ForeignPolicy.com calculates that if Iran recoups all its frozen assets and resumes normal oil sales, it will reap $420 billion over the next 15 years, all in exchange, Brett, for maintaining a frozen but not dismantled nuclear program.
James, thank you. Well, it is campaign announcement season tonight. We have some news about one particular prospective presidential hopeful. Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee told us today that he had news to make. So, it's decision time. Where are you?
I will announce on May the 5th in my hometown of Hope, Arkansas, what my plans are going to be. And I'll let everybody just say, come to Hope on May the 5th. You'll find out what's going to happen.
Last time, you said that all factors say go, but my heart says no.
Yeah.
You said you prayed about it last time, heading into the 2012 election. You've done the same, I suppose?
Absolutely. And I don't think anybody should enter into a decision that is this monumental, not just for me, but for my entire family, without a lot of prayer, a lot of thoughtful consideration, a lot of consultation with friends and family members. And so all of that is a very important factor in leading up to the decision that I will make and make clear on May the 5th.
I won't press you here, but let me talk about the path.
Okay.
Iowa is key for you. You won the Iowa caucuses back in 2008.
Yeah.
How do you paint the picture of your path to the nomination?
Well, we know that Iowa is going to be an important part of that path. There's going to be an expectation that I will do well there. I don't know, nor would I declare, I've got to win Iowa or I can't go for it. I think that'd be a little absurd because I don't think it's all based on one state. But clearly, coming out of Iowa with momentum is important. We need to do well in South Carolina. We need to show that we at least are competing in New Hampshire. It's a tougher state because it tends to be maybe a little more to the center and left, and I'm a little more to the right. May 5th is the day I'll make an announcement, and I hope people will come to Hope, Arkansas, and not just to tour the Bill Clinton birthplace, but there's going to be an announcement that day, and everybody will know for sure, whether Mike Huckabee is in the race or not.
Kind of ironic that it's in Hope, Arkansas.
I think it's symbolic. This is the town that I grew up in. It's a small town. It's like so many places in America. The little rent house that I grew up in, just a shotgun rent house on 2nd Street that my dad worked 2 jobs to pay the rent on, it's still standing. Yeah, I'm amazed it's still there, but it's still there. The old high school I went to, still there. A lot of great memories. I think it'll be worth tuning in for.
May 5th in Hope, Arkansas. Huckabee is part of a herd of Republican presidential hopefuls or would-bes rumbling through New Hampshire this weekend for another 2016 cattle call of sorts. Chief Political Correspondent Carl Kamen is live in Nashua tonight. Good evening, Carl.
Hi there, Brett. Most of the candidates are going to stick to sort of normal stump speeches. Not all of them are official candidates, of course. But what they're trying to do is introduce themselves to the voters, so there's a lot of repetition. And the other thing that they need to do already is begin to aggressively distinguish themselves from one another. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie spent the last 3 days in New Hampshire ahead of his appearance at the First of the Nation Summit.
The American people are anxious. They're filled with anxiety, not anger. They're worried about their country, and they should be. And the reason for that is absolutely feckless leadership by this president.
Though Christie's sometimes bombastic personality has at times been a liability, in the Granite State he wore it like a badge.
Some people say I'm too blunt and I'm too direct and too straightforward. I think we could use a little bit of that in Washington, D.C.
Former Texas Governor Rick Perry is getting something of a reputation for his expressive gestures and animated speaking style. He often puts his whole body into it. Perry said it's not enough for Republicans to just complain.
America is at a time of testing, and our leaders are failing the test. The conservative movement must be the agent of reform.
At a pre-summit town hall meeting last night in New Hampshire, Jeb Bush was asked about Obama administration controversial Attorney General nominee Loretta Lynch and said the president should have the right to pick his own team.
Someone is supportive of the president's policies, whether you agree with them or not. There should be some deference to the executive.
This morning, Bush headlined the Politics and Eggs breakfast and told reporters afterwards he's the most conservative in the pack.
I would match my record with anybody that's thinking about running, or any governor that during the last 20 years. It's an, I'm not kidding, conservative record. It's one of results.
At the summit late this afternoon, Bush again confronted suspicions.
A lot of us are not looking for a Republican in name only. I don't want a coronation on our side by any stretch of the imagination.
I don't see any coronation coming my way. I'll have to earn it. No one's going to give it to me. That is more than apparent.
Bush today suggested that the eligibility age for Social Security should be increased in, quote, short order. He's essentially echoing Chris Christie, who this week in New Hampshire unveiled sweeping entitlement reforms in an attempt to set himself apart from the rest of the pack. Brett?
Carl Cameron live in New Hampshire tonight. Carl, thanks. Up next, Muslims on an immigrant boat throw a dozen Christians overboard to their death. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 59 in Indianapolis with an AIDS outbreak in southeastern Indiana. The state health department says 120 cases are confirmed, with 10 others being investigated. The outbreak is attributed to drug users sharing needles. Fox 25 in Boston with the parents of marathon bombing victim Martin Richard asking that the death penalty be removed from consideration for Johar Tsarnaev. Bill and Denise Richard say the sentencing could bring years of appeals and prolong reliving the most painful day of their lives. And this is a live look at Seattle from our affiliate out there, Q13 Fox. They've obtained the 911 tape of the baggage handler who awoke to find himself trapped in the cargo hold of an Alaska Airlines plane.
Hello, I'm trapped in this plane, and I called my job, but I'm in this plane.
You're where?
I'm inside a plane, and I feel like it's moving in the air. Flight 448, can you please tell somebody to stop it?
Well, fortunately, that plane turned around and landed. The worker was unhurt. But the airline has banned him from working its flights for life. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway from Special Report. We'll be right back.